Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom, I would like to welcome you to our online event this evening. My name is Andreas Christ. I've been working for the foundation for over 10 years, a program manager now, and I'm working as a self-employed political educator specialized in European integration issues. Bulgaria has voted. Many of the people in Germany hardly noticed these elections and do not know that it potentially can have enormous impact on all European decisions. A European partner, after all, Bulgaria has been a member of the European Union since 2007, has been having difficulties finding a government for months, and last Sunday elected a new parliament for the second time within a period of only 3 months, as no government coalition could be formed after the elections in April. The official result will be in the next days, but we already know that there will be a head-to-head result between two parties in the lead, and tonight we have a discussion what that means for Bulgaria. I'm very pleased that we can talk about this important election for our European partner Bulgaria this evening, and I'm very much looking forward to the event that we are holding with our cooperation partner, the Europa Union Frankfurt, a non-party organization dedicated to a stronger European cooperation. On behalf of the European Europa Union, Klaus Klipp, the chairman of the section in Frankfurt, would now like to welcome you very briefly as well. Mr. Klipp, you have the floor.
Andreas, thank you. That's not the first time Europa Union Frankfurt is organizing an event on an important topic, and an interesting event on top of it, I think, together with Friedrich-Naumann Foundation. Today, I would like to thank Friedrich-Naumann-Stiftung for organizing this event together with us. Also, we had the support of the Bulgarian community in Frankfurt, and everybody working together in a team was enabling us to do this event. So then thank you very much for participating. You can go and follow us on Facebook or Instagram. It's Europa Union Frankfurt. And I wish us all a nice and interesting discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klipp. I'm very pleased that we were able to win a highly competent moderator for this exciting panel this evening. Ralf Siener is a German radio journalist, and until a few months ago, he was a correspondent at the European Union for WDR and NDR. In this capacity, he headed the WDR and NDR radio studios in Brussels. Ralf Siener will introduce you to the panelists, panel participants in a moment. In the chat, I will put 2 more or 3 more events that might be of interest to you. But now to the topic and Ralf Siener. I wish you, dear viewers, many insights and a successful round.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andreas, for your kind words. I worked for some years in Brussels, in Washington, and in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Now I'm a freelance journalist and happy to join this web talk after the elections, a new beginning for Bulgaria, ? And I think the question mark might be very important. And I would like to introduce the participants of this discussion. Lilia Dragova is the executive director of the Bilitis Resource Center Foundation. And I learned it's not only the oldest LGBTI organization in Bulgaria, but a champion for mobilizing LGBTI people in Bulgaria to eliminate all forms of discrimination and to achieve full equality for LGBTI people. A very warm welcome to Lilia Dragova. Then I continue with Georgi Ganev. He is he was the member of the 45th, and he will be the member of the 46th Bulgarian parliament. So congratulations for having been re-elected as a member of parliament again, Mr. Ganev. And you are also a program director at the Center for Liberal Strategies, a program director for economic research. You are an economist and you are assistant professor at Sofia University's Faculty of Economics and Business Administration. Yeah, you are mostly welcome to the discussion. Good evening. And I come to the second Georgi Ilyev. He is a local politician from Volt Frankfurt. Everybody knows Volt is a pan-European political movement. And Mr. Ilyev, he is a media producer and in Bulgaria, Volt Europe is represented in local parliaments. To mention this, Georgi Iliev works as a media producer. A very warm welcome to you also. I would like to start with Georgi Ganev. If you see the situation this evening, this Wednesday evening, no official result up to now, but one party named ITN, the party of a talk show moderator, of a pop singer, of a comedian, Slavy Trifonov, who presented its government team even before there is an official result and before the president of Bulgaria gave the mandate to him. So what's your feeling at this evening? How do you assess the actual situation?
Well, good evening, everybody. And thank you very much for the invitation and for the interest in Bulgarian politics. The last couple of days, I was actually thinking more in historical terms. Because this is the third, actually, TV personality party that makes it into parliament in Bulgarian history. The first one being an ultra-nationalist Ataka back in 2005, formed around a nationalist journalist. Then in 2014, we had the Bulgaria Without Censorship, formed again around a journalist, actually in 2013, sorry. And then we have now this party, ITN, stands for the Bulgarian abbreviation of the phrase, there is such a people. Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Actually, originally they tried to register under the title, there is no such state.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the court said, no, you cannot use the word state in your party name. So they named themselves, there is such a people, which is a strange name, but after all, it does point towards the populist standing of this party. This is the first one of all of those that wins elections. And in this respect, it reminds me very much of another Bulgarian party from more than a decade back, known as National Movement Simeon II, which was the King's Party. Bulgaria used to have to be a kingdom until 1946. Simeon was a boy king. When he had to abdicate, basically there was a referendum and the monarchy was over, and he was 9 years old. And then in 2001, he came back and won a landslide election, won a complete majority in parliament with this party named after himself. And I see a lot of repetition of style, of approach, and also of nominations. If we look at the cabinet that was offered on Monday, coming from this Simeon II movement from 10 years ago. So in a sense, if we count Simeon II movement as another populist type of very resurgent party, it seems like a pattern that gets repeated. The difference is that ITN party has only 65 seats this time, as opposed to the King, who had 120 20 years ago. So that's a big difference, but seems to be behaving in exactly the same manner. Basically, everything gets decided in the head of the leader. So that gives us the question of about the future. The opinion used to be that ITN, together with my coalition, I'm not non-party person, so I'm so-called civic quota, but the coalition that I ran in the name of is known as Democratic Bulgaria. It consists of three parties. One is the Da Bulgaria, Yes Bulgaria party, which is very much along the lines of judicial reform, extremely important issue. The other one is Democrats for Strong Bulgaria, which is an old sort of center-right party with more conservative profile. And strangely enough, for the conservative, we have also the Green Movement, which is not very conservative. Actually, it was the only portion of the Democratic Bulgaria which clearly supported the LGBT movement before the election. So I'm the civic quota. That's one of the so-called protest parties, because there used to be very strong protests against the previous prime minister and the previous majority last year, and also against the performance of the judiciary, and especially the prosecutor general. It is not very often that you get a protest in a democratic country, very large protests, centering on everybody wants the resignation of the prime minister, of course. But also wanting the resignation of the prosecutor general is not that often.
That's true.
So these are the protest parties. And the third protest party is the party where Volt is a part of the coalition. It has another strange name, Get Up, Mutri, which is a very, I'll leave to Georgi to translate that one. Mutri Van, Mutri out. So these bad people that were at the top should be out. That's the title of the coalition. And it also made the parliament both times, in April and now. So these were considered to be the three protest parties, but given what ITN did on Monday by the leader of ITN, the TV personality, proposing a sort of concoction of unclear projects rather than policies and priorities, politically speaking, just concrete projects like building kindergartens, giving tablets to students, and sending people in the cosmos, astronauts, mixed with some foreign policy, because he said we should take a Macedonian to make the Macedonians happy. So that, I mean, that's not policy. That's not policy priorities. That's not a strategy of approaching the state, the country's problems. And given the personalities that were proposed for the cabinet, it doesn't seem like it's a protest party. It seems like it's a party actually of the old status quo, backed up by people who gave up on the previous majority, but very much from the what we call behind the curtains type of powers that govern Bulgaria for at least, let's say, 15, 16 years. And that's the problem with the future. The question is, if this government does not get accepted, which seems very likely, nobody seems to pronounce the support for this proposed government. We have two other attempts before disbanding the parliament. The second attempt will go to the party of the previous majority, GERB, which is the Bulgarian abbreviation of Citizens for European Future for Bulgaria. And this party will probably propose something, but it will not get accepted because it's toxic right now. Nobody wants to even touch it with a 10-foot pole. And then the question is, then the president of the country, who was elected on the Socialist Party ticket 5 years ago, has the right to pick any of the other parties in parliament to give the mandate to form a government.
So it can come to you also.
It may come to Democratic Bulgaria, but party-wise speaking, in terms of political loyalties, probably he will go with the Socialist Party, and it makes a lot of sense. The Socialists are the third largest party, and also they are his party in a sense. But both the socialists and the leadership of the coalition Get Up, Mutri Out have announced already that they would propose the caretaker government, which is in place right now, to be elected as a regular parliament-backed government.
Mr. Gane, thank you. Perhaps that you introduce us a little bit into the political landscape. Now we know the name of the parties, the protest parties, and all the difficulties coming. And I would like to bring in the other participants into the discussion and ask Lidia Dragova, so what's your opinion about Slavy Trifonov and his so-called ITN party? I mean, he's behaving as a kind of insurgent. He also talks about a mafia state, Bulgaria captured by Borrisov, and so on and so on. So his phrasing seems to be critical towards the former government, GERB, and towards Borrisov. But Mr. Ganev, Georgi Ganev, said it might be only a camouflage. How do you see the situation?
Thank you very much for having me. I've been listening to Mr. Ganev, and I was trying to reflect on how complicated our realities is and how much time do we actually need to present to our partners outside of Bulgaria what is actually happening here. And I think that this in itself is an interesting thing that we can reflect on. Why is it so easy for us to grasp what are the processes in Germany or in Austria or in France or in Spain or in any other European Union country? Well, here it takes a lot of talking and a lot of background for us to understand and try to see what's behind the scenes. So I think that this in itself shows how really the state is captured and is being captured for quite a while, from the mutrid or the mafiosi, or from that people behind the scenes who are actually trying to rule through people who put on the seat and who we see. I personally grew up with Slavy Trifonov's music. I'm born in 1990. He was already popular several years after that. So I literally grew up with his music. And
you
I
liked
remember
his music?
His music is a particular style. There is also a discussion here not only about his politics, but also about what style of music he is doing. So I think he's a style in itself. So my first memory from him was in the 90s, when we also had very big protests here. Again, people on the street with hundreds of thousands, even million people on the street protesting against the government. And he was one of those young, educated, smart people who was trying to make a change. So he was part of the scene already as a youngster, as a person from the Sofia University Students' Council. So, you know, that hope for change of the young people who will do something in a different way, and Bulgaria will be in a different place. And then I think he was really very popular for the many years of his TV show, which was on national television every night of the work week. And I think that people really, really loved him and his music and what he did, because he also was that kind of against the political system kind of person. But this deteriorated over the last years, and I think he lost a lot of that charisma that he used to have. Nevertheless, we see his result, and is really very impressive. What he says is what people want to hear. I think he's really good at this. He's been doing this for over 20 years on TV. So people really resonate with his messages, but we really don't know what stands behind these messages. And only now, when we saw the positions that the people who he supported to be part of the government, we can now only start to see who are these people behind and what are the possible connections that we do not see. I think that people really need change, as we call it here, a deep change. And I think this is what the election results say. People really wanted to change the old system and really voted for the protest parties. And what is now happening is actually not a change, not a deep change, not a change at all. It's actually something else. And I really think that the way he acts now, it's pretty much mirroring the ways of Boyko Borrisov, our previous and long prime minister from the political party GERB. And I think that this is very dangerous, because we don't want another Borrisov. We want a changed system as a society, and this is what the results said. So I'm personally very It's intriguing because it's like a TV reality right now. Every second hour, there's someone else giving a press conference. There are like small sketches. People are creative around politics here because this is how we try to cope with all the drama and the things that we don't like. So we have a lot of charges and everything else on social media, but I'm personally quite, uneased of what's happening. And I think that this positive vibe that we all had with the results and the change that we saw with the elections, now it's coming down because we see that it will not be so easy to just have something that we're happy with.
Concerning your aim to eliminate all forms of discrimination and to achieve full equality, if you see Slavy Trifonov, he plays a little bit the role of a liberal academic and fighting like you against discrimination. He talked a long time with Le Monde, the French newspaper, but then there was an interesting reaction from him about this article on Facebook. What did this Facebook post tell you about Trifonov?
Yeah, well, basically what we read in Le Monde was that he was somewhat supportive of rights of LGBTI people, but then he used his Facebook profile where he actually communicates with the Bulgarian citizens, that this was a mistake by the interpreter and that the interpreter didn't get what he wanted to say correctly. And that as it is in the founding documents of his political party, he's supporting the traditional family, which in Bulgarian context and in Bulgarian language means that this is a statement against the rights of LGBTI people and against equality. I think it's interesting that actually, although he's framing as the savior and the one who is fighting for democracy and for the rule of law, actually he uses and he managed to take away a lot of electoral votes from the nationalist parties here. So the nationalist parties did not manage to enter into the parliament, neither in April nor now. And a large portion of the people who used to support them now see Slavy Trifonov as someone who is taking care of their wishes and rights. So he does use quite a lot this populistic, nationalistic, not so nationalistic, but rather patriotic approach. And for me, we don't know much about his ideas and political views because he kept quite silent in both elections. Yeah. And I think that this is very problematic because it's not a competition of ideas, it's a competition of personalities, and he only wins by being famous, and he's famous for being famous and for being on TV for 30 years, basically, not because we know what his party is going to do. So this is very problematic, and I'm concerned that his approach is going to be rather nationalistic / patriotic / traditionalist rather than progressive. And for LGBTI rights here and for the human rights in general in Bulgaria, this means a bad future.
Interesting, because you mentioned that the nationalists are loving him so much, because I read an analysis of his songs that he switched from rock and pop songs to folk songs because he had the impression that folk songs would be more loved by the nationalists. So that could be also an indication for what you said. Georgi Iliev, how do you see this evening? We don't know the exact official results, but we see that Slavy Trifonov could be a kind of kingmaker behind the scene. What are your ideas about this so-called kingmaker?
I guess my job, first of all, thank you for having me. I guess my job would be to make the connection to German politics and German society. Slavy Trifonov he's a showmaker. I guess he is late night is what you're going to call it, whatever he does, and he's done that for so many years. He's basically a part of Bulgarian TV. He is Bulgarian TV, more or less, and he is a Schlagersänger. So imagine if Michael Wendler all of a sudden decided to make a political party, or you can pick another Schlagersänger, and what makes him so special, what makes him so successful, is that he has his thumb on the Bulgarian national myth. So he exploits a lot of the themes that are in Bulgarian society about our history and pride and what we think. You know, he's done a lot of satire, a lot of political satire. So he's been kind of the you call him the king, and I think he has been more of a the court jousts. He's making fun of the king, and he's been making fun of a lot of people, a lot of politicians, a lot of powerful people in Bulgaria. And I think this is something that has made him kind of the people's choice. And when he decided to actually go into politics with his constitutional reform ideas, I remember talking to my parents about it, and I told them, this is a guy who can really take it. This is somebody who combines populism, combines nationalism, combines patriotism, and combines that unique Bulgarian feeling for a place in the world that we think we belong here, and that we have been mistreated throughout history. And he combines all of those things so perfectly.
It's like MAGA with Trump, make America great again, so make Bulgaria great again, a little bit this attitude.
Precisely. If Donald Trump was Conan O'Brien, and also, I don't know, Justin Timberlake, he combines so many things, so many different types of popular culture. And the thing about him and his party is that they don't really have substance. They don't really have anything going on for them politically. It's basically a party that's riding on his popularity, on his persona, and he's supposed to be some type of superhuman who is like a magnet for the best talent and the best people Bulgaria could offer. And he's going to bring them all together, and they're going to work together to make a better future. It's just that nobody really knows what that means. Nobody really understands where he is politically. He gave this interview in Le Monde where he gave himself to be very pro-European. He said one of his political heroes is Macron, so he supports a European federation. I think that he just says things that he doesn't really think or mean or understand. I don't think he really supports it. That's a position that I personally support, but I would be very surprised if he actually supported it. And that makes him even more Trumpy. He basically blurts out things. He talks to a French magazine, so he blurts out French things. He says Macron is my hero, and I want a European federation. He seems so out of place when he actually tries to make politics. So the fact that he won those elections by a slight margin makes this whole situation very, very hard to kind of define. Very, very complicated to. I don't really believe anybody can just tell you one sentence what this all means or what this election means, having Trifonov win the actual election. This is, for me personally, this is my head just explodes every time I try to think, how could this work out? How could we have a working government in the next 3 to 4 months?
Is it a crisis of democracy from your perspective? If you talk to your German friends in Frankfurt, how would you describe the actual situation?
Well, when I talked a lot about Bulgarian politics, I've talked a lot about it in the last 4 months. A lot of Volt people, a lot of people from not just from Germany, from all over Europe, to a lot of my American friends, and they've all kind of had more interest in Bulgaria during the elections, and for a lot of different reasons, Volt was supposed to get the next national government, or at least a seat in Bulgaria. So that was kind of interesting to Volt people, but actually didn't happen. But what I've been trying to tell people is that it's a lot of my friends, a lot of people I have contact with, they think that Bulgaria is a very conservative country because they look at us, they look at our politics, they look at, for example, what people say about LGBTQ people, and they think it's a very conservative country. And I don't think so. I don't think Bulgaria is actually that conservative. I think we've kind of become democratic limbo. It's kind of, the parties now have their slogans in their names. The parties are now kind of, they don't have positions, really. I mean, we have a liberal party, or we have a yellow liberal party that is not actually anything like a normal liberal party anywhere in Western Europe. They don't do anything of that sort, or at least that's not my analysis of it. GERB is supposed to be Christian Democrat Party. That's not really the case. I don't think so. That Christian Democrat, that doesn't make any sense in Bulgaria. While we are a Christian nation, and Christianity doesn't play a role in our politics, not even close, the way it does in Germany or the Netherlands.
So what will the future be? What will the future be? That's my question this evening. Is it just a crisis for the moment, or is it a political crisis? Because I see a little bit the danger. Borrisov is sitting there. He's not the winner. Okay, but he might be the winner in the end. Just sitting there, looking what's going on now, the crisis unfolding, no coalition government possible. So how do you see this?
I think Borrisov is political history. That's not just wishful thinking. I truly believe that he is history. The way he has to be at the police station tomorrow to give some kind of whatever, and the way he talks about things, he's just, I feel like he's totally out of it. Once he loses power, he's so irrelevant that I hope that GERB as a party just tries to lose him, because he's cancer to them right now. I really do hope that I'm right. And about your question, how is it going to, when Volt participated in the elections in Frankfurt, we didn't have a lot of chances. We did have a lot of success. We are part of the coalition right now. I was voted in. My chances were slimmer than a piece of paper. And this kind of experiences showed me that there is kind of a thing that the success could be big and could be quick. And I think this is happening to ITN, Slavy Trifonov's party. I think they're kind of scrambling because they didn't think they're going to make it that big. And what I believe is going to happen is that, the term, people, at least in the US, they say before the election is after the election. So let's talk about coalitions. Let's talk about politics before the election, so we don't have to talk about coalitions after the election. So this didn't happen in Bulgaria. So basically what I think is going to happen is we're going to talk about politics now, being forced to do it. And this is going to be our before the election. Again, I think we are heading for a third election in a row. But
that would be a disaster, because voter turnout right now was very low. Mr. Ganev, I learned it was the lowest turnout in the history of Bulgarian parliamentarism. I don't know exactly when it started, 1800, whatever. So the lowest voter turnout in history. That means there's a lot of frustration. And Georgi Ilyev said Borrisov is the past. Do you think the same? Is he the past, or is there a slight chance of comeback if now the situation will be very chaotic?
Well, I think in terms of him coming back to power, this is not an option in the future, but him remaining a factor in Bulgarian politics is quite possible.
Because he's still the party leader, and many mayors in the big Bulgarian cities are belonging to GERB and so on.
No,
No?
I have to differ here. The two biggest Bulgarian cities, GERB lost to my political
Okay.
coalition.
So that was the past.
He lost Sofia. Actually, he lost Sofia in April, and 2 days ago he lost Sofia even bigger.
Okay.
The margin 3 months ago was 8,000 votes, and on Sunday it was 24,000 votes in favor of democratic Bulgarian. He also he lost Plovdiv to Plovdiv city to Slavi Trifonov.
So he lost his power also as a party leader. You think he?
No,
because
he will still, no, it's impossible for this party to not have this leader. Because if this party gives up this leader, it will stop being this party. It will fall apart to at least several configurations based on strong local figures. Because as opposed to the King's Party 15 years ago, and as opposed to Slavi Trifonov's party, GERB does have a very solid local base in terms of middle range cities and in the different districts of Bulgaria. So he has they are a national party. They have their structure in the country. So it's not going to disappear, but the players will redistribute themselves. But I think that he needs the party to guard himself, his own person, especially in terms of all kinds of possible future investigations and things like that. They are quite possible. He has done a lot.
Even with this even with the prosecutor general you talked about, who was up to now his close friend.
His biggest fear is the present prosecutor general, because he is a person who turns around. He's not a loyal person.
Okay.
If he decides to turn against GERB, it's going to be very difficult. So he needs a party to shield him from such possible scenarios. He should be much less afraid from another better, let's say, prosecutor general who really tries to stick to the book rather than play political games as the last two prosecutors general. So I don't think he's out, but I don't think he's ever coming back as the head of government. Even if GERB enters into some form of government in Bulgaria, it will be in a coalition, and Boyko Borrisov will be a persona non grata in any talks. No party will ever agree to vote for a government headed by Boyko Borrisov anymore. And he can never form a government by his own party, even if he comes back under some scenario.
But if, Mr. Ganev, if Borrisov is the past and Trifonov is not the future, who is the future? Who could be the head of the government, and what kind of coalition could be there to manage Bulgaria in this time of COVID crisis and so on?
Let's hope that the COVID wave right now, Bulgaria is in between waves. Let's hope it lasts forever. But let's develop a scenario without this. And there are two possibilities. The first one is that the capture state type of model, which basically has been around for about 15, 16 years and developing and growing, is going to come back. To me, the most certain indication that this is happening would be if Slavi Trifonov's and Boyko Borrisov's parties, they have a full majority combined, adopt a majoritarian voting system. That's quite possible. If that happens, the behind the curtains capture state status quo is going to cement itself forever in Bulgaria. That's it. Game over. I can clearly see Article 50 in the European Union in some point of the future. Was it 50 or something, the thing that they suspended?
Let's say 50. The European Union, does it play any role? Because if you see the United States igniting the Magnitsky Act and blacklisting certain Bulgarian companies and oligarchs and so on, what's the role of the European Union from your perspective right now?
Sadly, it has been not very positive in two ways. Number one, the European People's Party is absolutely supporting Boyko Borrisov. I don't know.
So the party of Merkel and von der Leyen.
In the eyes of Bulgarians, the European People's Party is supporting the corrupt state capture model that has been established in Bulgaria, and stringently sticking to it. They seem like proud to support that model in Bulgaria. And the other problem is the liberal front, ALDE, and including our co-host here, Naumann, they're supporting the Union for Rights and Freedoms, which is a sort of nominally liberal party member of the liberal family in Europe, which is the Turkish minority party, which is the grandfather, the godfather, actually is a better word, of state capture in Bulgaria. And the person has a name. It's Ahmed Dugan. He is the godfather of the Bulgarian state capture mafia, and he is staunchly defended by the liberal family in Europe. So basically, I don't have in Europe any family to claim. Another very interesting thing that Georgi was explaining about Bulgarian politics, and especially the attitude towards LGBT issues, the Bulgarian Socialist Party is homophobic. They voted, let's say, and they based their campaign on voting against the something as innocent as the Istanbul Convention, based on arguments that it's going to introduce the same-sex marriages in Bulgaria. That was their explicit argument, even though it's not true, but who cares? So even the socialists in Bulgaria are strange. Now, the European Socialist Party has been lukewarm to that because it's headed by a Bulgarian who is basically not very popular with his own party in the country. So that the relations are more complicated there, but you can see that there's no really any family to join and not be a little bit, probably the Greens are the only one that you wouldn't be ashamed to join as a European family. So Europe and the European Commission has been formal. Look at what the Americans did. With one move, they stirred a huge wave of real problems for the Bulgarian mafia and behind the curtain model. They really did. Everything is running for cover and trying to cover and in panic and with one move. And Europe has all the tools to do it constantly. It doesn't. Let's hope Laura Kövesi does something on this front. She's just now starting. Let's see what happens there. Bulgaria was the first country she visited. Hopefully, that's a sign for something to come. But so far, Europe has not been offering the type of support that the Americans behind the big water really gave us, the people who tried to replace this model a couple of months ago with a relatively simple decision.
Let me bring in Lilia Dragova again into the discussion. Lilia, you are very active on this European stage. We are talking about the role of the European Union towards Bulgaria. I read you are on the board of the European Pride Organizers Association. So are you also disappointed from Brussels and what the European Union is doing? What are your expectations?
Yeah, I think that last year was actually a good year, and this year as well, with the adoption of the LGBTI strategy. And I think that this was a very important message that was sent by the Commission. However, these are just good words on a nice piece of paper if they're not somehow implemented in countries like Bulgaria and Poland and Hungary, and all those countries that actually do struggle a lot with equality and the topic of minority groups and vulnerable groups and just human rights in general, not only LGBTI people, although we can safely say that over the last 3 years, 4 years, LGBTI people, women and children's rights were actually the hot topic and the place where people were attacking civil society the most and countries the most and trying to gain some support. So if you look at from the outside, it does look good. In reality, however, the union is really very passive in their actions, and I think that this is a problem. And I think that in countries like Hungary and Poland, where we see how years of just pretending nothing's happening have horrible results nowadays, and Bulgaria is a good example how if the union is more proactive and if member states are more pushing, things might be stopped at an early stage.
Okay, you don't see the danger that Hungary's anti-LGBT laws may be copied in Bulgaria? You don't see
because no, and you know what? Because they can't do it here because they have no laws to take away from us. That's the big difference. There is legislation in Hungary in place for the protection of LGBTI people as well as in Poland. And what the governments do there is actually proactively go and take that away from the community. Well, in Bulgaria, we never had that. We never had any law apart from the Anti-Discrimination Act, which was adopted in 2004 as part of the EU accession process to include sexual orientation as a protected ground from discrimination. This is the only legal document in Bulgaria that talks about anything LGBTI related. So this was done, the box was ticked, and we were accessed in the EU with flying colors. However, this was never implemented in practice. The Bulgarian legislation does not include anything LGBTI related. So our government cannot do what Hungary and Poland are doing simply because they're in a better situation. And I think that this is also a big problem, and it corresponds to what I said earlier. It's so much easier to say, look at this act in Hungary is being taken down. This is a problem. Here, we need to talk a lot about the context and what the narrative is and how this is actually reflecting into the civil society and what people are thinking to get to the point of the problem. And the problem here is that the LGBTI community and other minority groups have been completely invisible from the eyes of the politicians forever, basically. We don't have any political actor to talk to openly in support of LGBTI rights, apart from the Greens, as Mr. Ganev said earlier, who did come up with a declaration now prior to Sofia Pride, when we saw unprecedented attacks on the LGBTI community in our events. There were organized groups of football hooligans, far-right nationalists, and people connected to the underground world who are attending our events, trying to start conflict, throwing eggs, bottles of water, smoke bombs at us, putting stickers on our buildings, and really trying to scare the community. And the only political party that, as a political party, came up with a declaration that was saying, this is not good, were the Greens. And this was a good sign because at that time we were already within the 45th parliament. So that was a party parliamentary represented. And this is the first time that the LGBTI community in Bulgaria actually sees that kind of support. And this is something that I think we need to talk more about, and how in different countries discrimination can look in a different way, and how it's not so easy to grasp firsthand and understand the context, but rather need to know more. And this is how human rights, women's rights, children's rights are being attacked, and people working in that field have been harassed by institutions, by the media. I think it's also important to mention that we only don't have state capture, we also have media capture here. Bulgaria ranks 112 in the freedom, what was it? Media freedom index? Media freedom index by Reporters Without Borders, yeah, 112th place. The only other European country it's a question mark or exclamation mark, I don't know, not European Union country, but European country as the Europe, the continent, that scores worse than Bulgaria is Turkey. And I think that this in itself says a lot. So in this situation where politicians are simply populistic and they don't have that conversation about politics and about ideas and visions and how we want to move forward, but just accuse one another of the very same things and try to win votes just for the sake of being first or having more members of parliament and having no freedom, media freedom at all, because the person that owns the media basically is the person that the Magnitsky Act was put upon. This creates a very, very dangerous situation.
So if you see the situation right now, what kind of hope do you have? The chance for a coalition of the protest party, for minority coalition, is very small.
I think it's getting smaller by the hour. Honestly, this was my personal hope that the protest parties would really join forces and really deliver what people demanded. And we were on the streets for months, and we demanded the resignation of the past government, of Borisov's government, and the resignation of the prosecutor general. Now, Slavi Trifonov's priorities are, as Mr. Ganev rightly said, buying helicopters and buying laptops, and this is not a priority. I mean,
yeah, but he also said that the prosecutor general should be elected by the people. So he had this populistic attitude.
He said nothing about the prosecutor general being out within his message that was video streamed. This was not a topic that he touched upon, and this in itself shows that things are being shifted and it's not what people demanded. And I think that really the protest parties were open to lend a hand and to really try and form something new. But by doing what he did, Slavi Trifonov just alienated them, and I don't think that they will be able to join forces once again, although we also heard different approaches how this could happen. I don't think that this will happen, and I'm afraid that we're really going into next round of elections, which I think will be devastating. And I think that the political crisis will get deeper. And I'm also afraid that with Borisov's attitude, which is sadly him being in power and his party over the last 12, 13 years, he knows how it works. He knows how the state works. And he will just sit there and watch the newly emerged parties who do not have that big political experience. Many of the people are first-time politicians, not all of them, but many of them. So they lack experience. They don't know the procedures. They don't know the bureaucratic approach. I think.
Are you afraid that Borisov might come back, that he's sitting there seeing this failure, they are not experienced, and he can just wait, like sitting in the theater box, see the theater, see the drama unfolding, and then like a kind of Salvation Army coming back? Do you see this as a danger?
I think it is. My hope is not that that doesn't happen, but I try to be more realistic / negativistic just to prepare myself, because it's been like the roller coaster has been down the road. And I think that Borisov, with the slogan that he came up in the elections, it's order in the chaos. How on earth can you govern a country for 13 years and then you're out for 4 and all of a sudden you think it's chaos? I mean, if there is chaos, obviously it was a result of your ruling there. So he's trying to look as the one who is the right politician, the one that is stable, being in place, understanding how it works. And those newly emerging leaders and parties who are like children in the playground, they don't know what to do, so I'm the one who will save the day. I think that this is his attitude. And although I really hope that with everything that we saw from the caretaker government and all the corruption scandals that were now revealed, I hope that people really start to see how bad was this for Bulgaria and that Borisov shouldn't come back. But I'm afraid that he's still too strong.
Okay, Georgiev, what's your perspective? Should now the protest party be willing to form a kind of coalition government with GERB to prevent against snap election, which would be a disaster if you see the low voter turnout? So has to be there some kind of more flexibility by the protest parties from your perspective, from your Volt perspective?
Yes, I think stability should be priority number one for all of the parties. I think the fact that Democrats Bulgaria have been growing since the last election, it probably shows that the interim government has worked for the protest parties. I think stability is super important, not just because we need a stable government, not just because this crisis is going to just grow and could potentially be much more dangerous to us, but also because COVID is breathing in our necks. There's just 10% of the Bulgarian population who have been fully vaccinated. This is outrageous, and it's kind of part of this mismanagement clown show that's been going on for the last 6 months. And in perspective of COVID, what I think is something that could work with my political instincts would be to demand from GERB to lose the dead weight, just kick Borrisov out. It's obvious that the protest parties won those elections. If we combine all of the percentages, we should be pretty certain that the protest parties won, or the reformist parties. So they should demand from GERB to lose the dead weight and then propose a coalition. I think that's something that could work. That's something that wouldn't mean losing voters for the protest parties. I think protest parties are very afraid to have anything to do with GERB right about now, because they believe that would be a lie to their voters. Exactly. But I do think that a very stern, very strict proposition for just kick that man out, kick all of them out that were the bad guys in that party, and try to work with the rest of GERB. I think this is something that could work. This is at least my political instinct. I'm certain it's not very realistic. I'm probably being a bit too I'm looking at it at pink glasses, I think, but that's my idea about it. I just simply cannot see how any government could be any stability could be reached if compromise is not on the table. Big compromise for everybody involved, especially with a non-communication party like Slavy Trifonov, the showman's party. It's hard to imagine that this party is going to. I don't think they are a bit like Trump. They won the election and now they're looking around, trying to figure out what they're going to do, who they're going to work with, and they have no idea. This is dangerous. This is very, very dangerous for the stability of Bulgaria and the European Union.
Mentioning stability, Georgi Ganev, so the proposal from Georgi Ilyev, let's kick Borrisov out of GERB, try to renovate in a certain manner GERB a little bit, and then work together. Could this be a perspective for your party, the DB party, Democratic Bulgaria, if GERB would be willing really to throw him out, and if we want to have a new leader, then would it be a possibility for you, for your party and the other opposition parties to try to form a government that you don't have against snap election with even a lower voter turnout below 40% and so on and so on?
Yes, thank you for that question. It allows me to describe the more optimistic scenario for the future. It's basically the following. I don't think we can expect Borrisov to be thrown out of GERB before, but this next parliament has to form a government. So he will be in the picture. The part of the strategy would be to form a government which lasts, let's not forget that we didn't mention that, but it's a very important aspect of the political landscape right now. We have presidential elections in early November. We have an extremely strong candidate in the incumbent president. I don't see anybody trying to challenge him. Even Borrisov, if he does that, it would really look desperate. But we have the elections. So we need a parliamentary-backed government for the presidential elections. So there will be a government with some reformist agenda. Again, most probably it will be formed around the present caretaker government with probably some small changes. And then after the president enters the second or whatever, if there's a new president enters their term in January, the door will be open for potential, again, new early elections, but it will be 1 year probably between the elections, so not that dramatic. And within this approximately 1 year, we Democratic Bulgaria can work along two lines. Find people among the ITN party who are willing to really do reforms and try to connect with them. And also find people within GERB, with or without Borrisov GERB, who would be willing to do reforms. And of course, talk to the Socialist Party. Never forget the Socialist Party, extremely important old party, about major priorities. Obviously, on some economic issues, we will not have much agreement, but on judicial reforms, they seem to be more and more adopting a reasonable stance on the proposed reforms. So, and then form a coalition in a potential next parliament, which will be much more reformist. That's the optimistic scenario.
Thank you so much, Georgi Ganif, for this optimistic perspective at the end of this web talk. Thank you, Lilia Dragova, and thank you, Georgi Ilyev, for your participation. Let's hope that the optimistic perspective will be, in the end, the reality. After the elections, a new beginning for Bulgaria, ? This was the event organized by the Friedrich-Naumann and Karl Hermann Flach Foundation in cooperation with the Europa Union Frankfurt. I thank you very much for this vivid discussion, and have a wonderful evening to you in Sofia, wherever you are, and in Frankfurt, and goodbye. My name was Ralf Sina. That's it.